Before we start, make sure you subscribe and like this video. The Forgotten Woman of Crescent Beach. It was a sunny April day in 1985 when a beachgoer stumbled upon a grim discovery in the sands of Crescent Beach, about 50 miles south of Jacksonville, Florida. Buried in a shallow grave lay the remains of a woman, her identity a mystery. The St. Johns County Sheriff's Office was called in, and after examining the scene, they determined this was no accident. The woman had been the victim of a homicide. The initial investigation revealed the victim was a white female, likely between the ages of 30 and 50 at the time of her death. But beyond that, there were few clues to go on. With no witnesses and no obvious leads, the case quickly went cold. For nearly 4 decades, the identity of the Crescent Beach Jane Doe remained a mystery, her killer never brought to justice. That is, until earlier this year, when advances in DNA technology finally gave investigators the break they had been searching for. In January 2024, the sheriff's office announced that the victim had been identified as Mary Alice Potts, a woman who had gone missing back in 1968. Potts, born in 1943, was raised in Maryland. By all accounts, she had led a relatively normal life until 1968, when she suddenly vanished after leaving with her boyfriend, John Thomas Fugit. Due to the times, communication was not great, explained Sergeant Gene Talbot. The belief is that Mary Alice and, he went by Tommy, had kind of moved off together, potentially to either Florida or Georgia. For years, Potts's family wondered what had become of her. Had she run off with Fugit, as the authorities suspected, or had something more sinister happened? Now, after all this time, the horrible truth had finally come to light. According to the medical examiner's findings, Potts had suffered severe trauma that would have required hospitalization, such as being in a serious car crash or being struck by a vehicle. She also had burr holes in her skull, indicating she had undergone some kind of brain surgery after 1968. Additionally, an abscess was found in her upper gum line, which would have caused her significant discomfort and pain. Sergeant Talbot believes these injuries point to a violent incident that Potts was involved in, one that ultimately led to her death. And unfortunately, the man most likely responsible for her demise, John Thomas Fugit, is no longer alive to answer for his crimes. Fugit, who also went by the alias Billy Joe Wallace, was eventually sentenced to death in Georgia for the 1981 murder of a male roommate. He died in prison before his execution could be carried out. Detectives learned that Fugit, who was known to go by an alias of Billy Joe Wallace, was sentenced to death in Georgia related to a 1981 murder of a male roommate, the sheriff's office said in a statement. Fugit died in prison prior to his execution. While Fugit's death means he will never face justice for Potts's murder, the fact that her identity has finally been uncovered after all these years is still seen as a victory by the investigators who have worked tirelessly on the case. The combination of highly skilled detectives and advanced DNA technology has given Mary Alice's family some answers about her disappearance close to 40 years ago, said Sheriff Rob Hardwick. Our major crimes detectives are some of the best in the business, and I am proud of their dedication to be a voice for homicide victims and their families as we seek closure for loved ones. For Potts's family, the news of her identification, while bittersweet, has provided a sense of closure they've been searching for all these years. They can finally lay their loved one to rest and perhaps find some peace in knowing that the mystery of her disappearance has been solved, even if the person responsible is no longer around to face the consequences. The Crescent Beach Jane Doe case is a powerful reminder that no matter how much time has passed, the pursuit of justice for the victims of violent crimes must never be abandoned. Through the tireless efforts of dedicated investigators and the advancements in forensic science, even the coldest of cases can be cracked, giving families the answers and closure they so desperately need.